Android phones run faster, cooler, and with more memories available, so clearing the junk. And by doing those, we do know the apps and other usage of the phones that the users have. And similar to, as Google knows, the search terms people have. And from those information that we can, or the machine can speculate the interest of the people. Now that combined with other information, locational information, also the previous content that the person like to consume, or even what ads the person like to click, then we can actually, without the person subscribing to certain topics, that we can put in the right content through this app to the user at the right time. So that's just a little app that we are working on, which is really a content delivery system. But behind it is a little AI engine by processing the data that we have. So that's really just one example. Yeah. So that's the end of my talk. As promised, it's kind of shallow, but it is certainly a very interesting topic. I'm only touching one little aspect of it. It's like an elephant, just touching a little thing. But it's certainly changing our world and changing industry by industry, and I think it will affect many of us. Yes.
Yeah, the biologists are very concerned with the idea that when you have, for example, all this gene technology, that there's a moral aspect of
Yes.
whether you should do it or not. Is that same thing being thought of in terms of AI?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff here you're talking about that potentially is rather disturbing from a moral standpoint.
For sure, certainly. I think in a lot of these leading edge technologies, in particular in the gene and gene processing, gene engineering, and in AI, perhaps the ethical questions is more important than the technical ones.
The humans make the rules.
For example, autonomous driving. I think probably the challenge or the blocks in the legal and ethical area is no less than the technical area. Even if you have less accident, but rather than the human mistakes that I kill myself by driving not carefully, but if my car kills me,
Weather.
and,
Weather.
and that becomes a different question. So, yes.
So you were touching on ethical, and I've been watching a lot of news lately, mostly because of the election, and they talk about, oh, so-and-so's wiretapped, or, we were monitoring so-and-so.
Right.
If all the applications are, basically you own that voice data that's going over your app, that's going over the phone, right? That's your property.
Right.
And
So that's another.
You don't even own.
That's also that's another aspect of ethical or legal or privacy aspect of this technology. Now, as a company, we are governed. One is by law, and the other there are ecosystem leaders like Google. Like we live under the Google Play, meaning our app are being distributed over Google Play, and Google Play has set up I think, now certainly there are criticisms, but I think it sets up a reasonable privacy protection for users, and they try to govern the whole ecosystem by it. So essentially, for our app to collect data, even if we don't read it, if the machine read it, we cannot collect data just for the reason of collecting data. It has to be for a function that user needs, and the user has to click. As you download the app, it will tell you what the information. If you download any app on Google Play, it will tell you what information this app will collect from you. Now, I don't know if you read those notice, but there is a process where it governs what information you can collect, what information you cannot collect. So there are two golden rules. One is you have to have a function that makes it necessary for you to collect the data, and second, the user has to agree to it. Yes.
You mentioned about that, this deep learning stuff is more useful for sensory kind of
Yes.
thing, but then, like, I look at your News Republic, it's already beyond that. So do you still think that it's restricted to sensory, or it's going to go far beyond sensory?
I don't think it's restricted by sensory. I think even for recommendation engines, we used to run a GVDT system. Now it's just been replaced by DNN system, which outperform it by 2%. So it's by a small percentage, not as much as a vision thing, but it's still an advantage. So the advantage of a neural network is not just limited to the vision and speech and the translation I mentioned. It certainly goes to the other areas. It's just those are the low-hanging fruits. I think that you see the bigger benefits earlier. So in our case, that our system on DNN outperforms our previous state-of-the-art system as well. Yes.
Is there any thought to how to verify these systems if they are a black box? I mean, for instance, you could use part of your data that has the answers
Yes.
and say how well to do, but what if there's something more open-ended like the autonomous driving, which is also very important that you don't make a mistake.
Right.
And if your system is a black box, how do you even know what the edge cases are?
Right. So I certainly don't think deep neural nets solve every problem. I think it's for supervised learning problems, it's very good. For unsupervised, it's still an area of very active research. That the area is unclear. And in autonomous driving, in various gaming, it's all pretty open still. So DNN is not a complete answer to those problems.
So there's no ideas of how you might verify things like this that are kind of.
Well, I think there is this whole big field about reinforcement learning, where I think autonomous driving sort of fall into that category, perhaps. That you don't know what the right answer is, but you kind of test, and you have a kind of objective function, and you try to always optimize your objective function, and in the game is to win, and in driving it might be other objective function, and you try different things, and the machine kind of tries to learn. And then there are other people still think, this just maybe just one incremental step. There may be 10 more steps before we reach a really scary world. But we don't know what the next step is, because how people learn is still very different from how machine learn. Now, we don't know whether people have the best way of learning, but certainly we don't get trained 1 million data points before we know how to talk or something. We have a shortcut to it. Yes.
Is anybody tracking who's using these systems behind the scenes? For example, college admissions could be determined by machine learning algorithms.
Yes.
Things like mortgages, getting a mortgage
Yes.
approval, could all be done much faster, much more efficiently with machine learning algorithms.
Yes.
And some of these algorithms may be impacting our lives already without us even knowing it.
Yeah.
Who's tracking how these things are being used?
I don't think anybody's tracking. I think it's a free game for everyone. Like you are right, data mining, machine learning is not new. It's been around for 30 years, at least, and it's everywhere. Just what's kind of new in the last 5 years is this DNN has proven itself to be a superior model to a lot of the other models in certain fields, and that number of fields are expanding. So that's what happened in the last 5 years. But really, I think machine learning is so pervasive through every industry now that I'm sure our insurance company are using it to decide our premiums and so on and so forth.
There are some regulatory hurdles. For example, drug trials you've got to be careful what you use to do drug trial analysis. That's specified by FDA. The banking stuff like loan requirements and things like that has got regulations on it because they want to be careful about redlining districts and things like that, so a number of deals with that.
Yes.
Yeah, your talk is a lot about the parallels between the development of the internet and the development of neural networks. In the early days of the internet, the companies that can hire programmers controlled what the content was, but a big step was made when tools were developed that the everyday consumer could create content and publish web pages. Do you see anything parallel coming there where tools will be developed that the everyday consumer can make use of neural networks?
Possibly. For example, for example, Amazon are doing a few things. One is through AWS, it starts to have various APIs that are relatively easy to use. Now, I don't know if it's for every consumer, but for every technical person, you can use those APIs without getting data, training things yourself, doing speech recognition, doing pattern recognition on pictures. So AWS is publishing more and more APIs. Now they charge you for it, allow you to do those things with much lower hurdles. And they also are opening up their Alexa platform to allow you to write skills. So and skills is what they call apps. So they don't call it app, they call skills. So anyone can program a skill on top of Alexa beyond what Alexa came with. So you can program your Alexa to do various things, and it has a particular programming paradigm for it. And I can see you can potentially have it so easy to use. For example, you can configure your home assistant to do certain things. If the paper comes, do what? For my baby, if she or he wakes at certain hours, play what kind of music. So those can be conceivable to not requiring any programming language, but by just for anyone to operate. So my answer is probably yes, and I think we'll probably see some of it over the coming years.
So
Yeah.
we have come to the end of the luncheon.
Okay.
Charles, thank you very much.